Hello, I'm very pleased to welcome Izzy Walker to this discussion this morning. Izzy is one of the founders of Action on Pre-eclampsia, a journalist and a mum. Izzy, delighted to have you here. Thank you very much for joining me. I'd be really keen to learn from the outset about your story about pre-eclampsia. From your perspective, how did you become aware of pre-eclampsia, what it is, and where did that take you?
Okay, well, I'd barely even heard of preeclampsia when I got pregnant for the first time. It turns out that my mother had had it, but she died before I got married, so I wasn't aware of that. And my sister had had it, but she had so many other health problems that I just didn't know about the preeclampsia. Um, I expected to have a perfectly normal pregnancy and a healthy outcome. I was a medical journalist, so I knew quite a lot about pregnancy and I was fit and healthy and well informed. And so it was with some surprise that when I was 27 weeks pregnant, I found myself racing to hospital in an ambulance with the blue lights flashing and the horn blaring. I had suffered fulminating preeclampsia. At that stage, my organs were failing. But because it was early onset, the doctors hadn't been looking for it and they had misdiagnosed me. And it wasn't until I was seriously ill that it was realized something had to be done. And when I got to the hospital, it was clear that I was in a really bad way and that the only way to cure the problem was to deliver my baby, even though he was 27 weeks. And in those days, 27 weekers only had a 50-50 chance of survival. So he was delivered by emergency cesarean and he died 2 days later. So that was my experience of preeclampsia.
Devastating. But clearly, we wouldn't be having this conversation many years later if that hadn't led to life-changing things for you.
Yeah.
And would you like to tell me what happened next?
So at my postnatal check, which was at a teaching hospital, I won't name it, they said, well, we don't really know much about preeclampsia. You'll probably get it again. You might want to consider not having any more children. My husband and I ignored that advice. I got pregnant quite quickly, but as soon as I was pregnant, I was absolutely terrified that the same thing was going to happen again. But I was really lucky. Something amazing happened. When I was about 8 weeks pregnant, I read this article in the Independent newspaper about a man called Dr. Chris Redman, who ran a high risk pregnancy unit at the John Radcliffe Hospital in Oxford, which was about 50 miles away from where I live in Watford. Now, I rang him up under kind of the pretense of doing an interview with him because I was a medical journalist. In fact, I did do the interview, but halfway through the interview, because I could tell he was a really nice, kind, caring doctor, I broke cover and I told him my story and told him I was absolutely terrified. And I'll never forget what he said. He said, I've got a window in my diary next Tuesday. Come along with your husband. I'll give you an hour. I'll tell you what I know about preeclampsia. So I went along, and that was when the veil of ignorance dropped because what he didn't know about preeclampsia wasn't worth knowing. And he confirmed that I had been misdiagnosed, my case had been mismanaged, and that he would write a letter to my local consultant saying how I should be managed in this current pregnancy. And then, almost as an afterthought, he said, well, of course, I could look after you, but you wouldn't want to travel all that way. And my husband and I, as one, just said, if it was twice as long, we would travel that way. So he made sure I had a good outcome in that pregnancy, even though I still had preeclampsia, but not so early onset. And the next, I then had two healthy children. And he and I started to collaborate on some articles because he was really the world expert on preeclampsia. I was a writer. And one day he said he was so passionate about preeclampsia and how poorly understood it was. And one day I said to him, well, why don't you write a book? And he said, well, I don't have the time and I'm not a writer. And I said, I am a writer and I do have the time. And that's how it came about that we wrote our first book together, Preeclampsia, The Facts, published by, God, who was it published by? OUP
UP,
in,
wasn't it? Yeah.
yeah,
The
in
Red Book.
1992. And what happened, we didn't want it to be just some kind of academic tome. So we placed adverts in women's magazines asking for women to tell their stories about preeclampsia. We heard in the end from about 700 women, and they all told very, very similar stories of misdiagnosis and mismanagement and near death experience and dead babies. And we said to each other, isn't enough just to write this book. We need to set up a permanent source of information and support. And that was the beginnings of APEC.
Excellent, excellent. So, I just to put it into context, this was quite some time ago, and your sons are now adults, aren't they?
Well, I'm glad to
Um,
have a son and a daughter, Marcus, and
sorry, a
they,
son and
they,
daughter.
they are 37 and 36.
Yeah, yeah. So hopefully, as a result of your work and Chris's work and many others beside, things have changed quite a bit. But do you think it's still important that we have a pre-eclampsia charity, and why is it important?
Yeah, it's incredibly important because um, women's health issues and particularly women's maternity issues have always been sidelined in research. It's never attracted much money or much attention. If men got preeclampsia, it would be a different thing. And so it's really, really important that we have an organization that is still providing information, support, raising awareness, and promoting research. Because the astonishing thing is that even though preeclampsia has been known about for 2,000 years, the root cause is still not known, and until the root causes are known, it won't be possible to design treatments that can manage it or even cure it. Because it still remains the only cure is to deliver the baby, even if that baby is too premature to survive, as mine was. So yes, APEC has an absolutely crucial role now and in the future. Chris Redman, who sadly died last year, he was the first chair of obstetric medicine ever in the UK. His dearest wish was not to die before the cause of preeclampsia was established. And sadly, he didn't get his wish, but the hope remains.
Absolutely, and we continue as a charity to support women first and foremost. That's what it's about, but also we provide the voice for patients in research, and we'll continue to do that. So it's very important, and we recognise Chris's legacy and what he did, particularly with the Walker Redman Award that we offer each year to medical students who are starting out on their career. So we are therefore continuing the legacy and continuing the work that you've done. But how do you think the charity's changed and developed during your involvement?
Well, it's obviously grown because when it started, it was just me running things on a voluntary basis, and then gradually we got support in terms of funds. We were able to get a staff. We were able to set up a helpline, absolutely crucial for providing support for women and giving them advice. That started out in my utility room. I didn't know what I was doing, but APEC is now set up as a proper organisation, and I like to think that APEC has, in no small way, has raised women's awareness of preeclampsia so that they are aware of the signs and symptoms, has improved detection and treatment by health professionals, and will be in the end in promoting research that will provide better methods of screening and prevention, and hopefully in the end treatment, maybe even a cure. And I do like to think, because maternal deaths have dropped certainly since APEC was founded now 33 years ago. And I like to think that is in no small part because of the work of APEC.
I would like to think so as well. So, what do you think about the future for APEC? Where do you think the charity should go next?
The goal of any charity should be to make itself redundant. I
Yeah.
firmly believe that. So, if APEC ever reaches a point where preeclampsia is preventable, treatable, curable, completely understood, there may be no need for the charity anymore. But while none of those things is true, APEC needs to continue with all its great work, and grow bigger, grow more important, and have an increasing impact, not just on women and health professionals, but on the scientists doing that crucial research.
Izzy, thank you very much for your time today. Thank you for your insight, and reminding us all what we're all about. So, thank you very much for that.